Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. Everybody on the stream, everybody in the chat with us. We're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discussing Trek. Today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 7 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Those Old Scientists. TOS, for short. What we're doing on this podcast is talk about all things Trek. So thanks for joining us. Like always, I'm your host, Clarence. And on this show, we have our friends / Trekkies, starting with none other than guest, writer, all things cool, Mr. Lee Shackford. How you doing, man?
Very well, sir. Very well. Look at this. You can tell the bridge is a bad background for me if I can't say live long and prosper without it blurring out. So anyway,
You're dressed apart, sir. You shamed me as I came on to the stream to do our little pre-show thing. I was shamed by you and your science officer shirt there, and I had
to your credit, you had a command shirt within sufficient reach that you could run and jump one on. So, yeah.
Yes, I'm wearing shorts under this, but the up top looks
that's
okay.
Right. These are. I do not have my Enterprise pants on. So there you go.
So you're going for season 1 of The Next Generation with the shorts, right?
Oh, my scant? No, I don't have the scant on.
Not with the kilt, no.
And that voice you hear there is, of course, Mr. Jones. How you doing, sir?
You know what? I'm a little confused as well as feeling deja vu. So there you go. But I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you, sir.
This is about Doctor Who, right?
I know exactly. That's why I'm confused.
Good.
It's Kyle, Clarence, and Lee on Tuesday at 7:30.
And to be fair, we are talking about time travel, so
Well, there you go.
Take your pick.
There you go.
And also on the podcast, we have Larry Irby. How you doing, man?
I am doing okay.
Glad to have you, sir. So does anybody have any news topics they want to cover real quick? I don't have anything. We kind of hit the Comic-Con news on our last show, but does anyone have anything? And if not, we'll go ahead, and get into our review of Strange New Worlds, These Old Scientists, which was written by Kathryn Lyn Bill Wolkoff and directed by the great Jonathan Frakes. An accident while investing a time portal sends Ensign Brad Boimler through time from the 24th century, and Captain Pike and his crew must get him back where he belongs, where he can somehow alter the timeline. So, Mr. Jones, if you would give us that spoiler warning, sir.
So for everyone listening, if you have not seen TOS, not the series, those old scientists, put us on pause, go out, watch the episode, come back, because from this moment forward, spoilers.
The spoiler warning has been dropped, and like always, we go right back to Mr. Jones for the beats of the episode. Sometimes serious, sometimes comedic. Honestly, you never know. Mr. Jones, what do you have for us this week, sir?
There is a 50-50 chance that, for me, Crow might be on the menu, but we'll find out.
That's kind of telling.
Might.
Might.
I might be setting you up, but we'll find out.
And I'll say real quick, thanks to everyone in the chat. I see Tasha there as well as Win Grace. Thank you guys for being there. And I'm going to go right to Mr. Shackford here. Your high-level thoughts of this episode.
I can't, as a fan of the original series, obviously, I can't help thinking about what we now know, thanks to the books. These are the voyages, where they went through all the inter-office memos and everything, and told some stories that we hadn't heard before. But one of the stories that we've learned is now production history, is that they talked Gene Roddenberry into taking a vacation. He was working himself to exhaustion in the middle of season 2, and they left Gene Coon in charge. And when Gene Roddenberry came back, fans of TOS will appreciate this because you know the titles. He found that Gene Coon had greenlit The Trouble with Tribbles, I, Mud, and a piece of the action.
Wow.
And Gene Roddenberry basically said, I love you. You've made this show what it is, and you're fired.
Wow.
And a lot of us who really appreciate Gene Coon's work have said, that is the beginning of the end. It's all downhill from here. So when you get such a comedic treatment in a show that is supposed to be a dramatic show, I'm feeling Roddenberry's discomfort here. It's like, hey, this is my show. I think of this very seriously. This is not about tribbles or androids being goofy or our heroes playing like they're gangsters. What have you done to my show? But all those are not three of the most beloved episodes of
Yes,
season 2 TOS.
Definitely.
we agree.
So I think Longview, their gut feelings, they're probably both right. Longview, Gene Coon was right.
Yeah.
So this is very daring. It really breaks the mold of things we've done so far. But my golly, what a lot of fun. What an hour of fun. If you know Lower Decks already. If you don't, this could be mystifying. Although I've been seeing people on social media saying, okay, clearly I need to be watching Lower Decks. So it's going to run a lot of people over to the other show. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a notion I think I can agree with because, man, well, I'll let Larry go and I'll give my thoughts,
Yeah.
but agreed. I feel like they knocked it out the park. Larry, high level thoughts on this episode, sir?
Well, I think I am up to 4 times watching it. I loved it, as I said, and I know I've just met Lee, which is good to meet you finally. I'm 55 for over a month now. Been watching Trek since I was 5 years old.
Mhm.
So I have a long-standing history. And you're right when you just said a piece of the action is one of my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes. It just is. But this episode, just the comedy, and when Star Trek does comedy and they do it well, it's amazing. And this was a home run. This was a grand slam to me. I watched this and I was a little kid. Instead of being 55, I was 5. I just loved it. That's it.
Mr. Jones, any additional thoughts?
So, without getting into the story, let's just think of the concept here. This property successfully took an 2D animated story and in canon, successfully wove together all the elements to where it made sense to go from live action to animation. That in itself, to me, is freaking awesome. That said, I'm eating crow because I loved Mariner and Boimler in this episode.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, after seeing the trailer, I really felt like I was going to like it because in the trailer, it seemed like we'd be getting a more muted version of those characters that we see on Lower Decks. I think maybe that. Well, I think we did. I think we did. I mean that in combination with I think excellently written jokes. I think the comedy was spot on. You know, you got to give it up to the writers for Strange New Worlds. They did an excellent job. I wonder how much did Mike McMahon play into some of the writing of this episode. But man, the writing is good. The jokes are on point. And, you know, we talk about Lower Decks and some of us anyway, have issues with it. For me, it's more the slapsticky stuff that I really can't get on board with. But if it was written this good, I would definitely be on board with Lower Decks more. So no hate to Lower Decks, to each their own. But as Lee stated, this episode went a long way into making me like the characters even more. You know, 3 seasons in, I had already started to like them even more already. But just seeing, you know, a slightly muted version of these characters in live action, I think it won me over. Yeah. So let's just get into it. I want to ask about crossovers in general. And Kyle, you mentioned it going from animated to live action. And we can even think of it in reverse because Lee loves the animated series. That was going from live action to animation, and we're coming full circle here a little bit. How do we think they did in the effort to bring the very tall Tawny Newsome and Jack Quaid over from the animated versions to live action, and to see these real actual voice actors come back and step into these characters' roles. Do we think they did a good job in that effort?
So first, let me say this could not have been possible well, it would have been possible, but I guess it wouldn't have been as easily possible if the actors had not been used somewhat as a template for their characters, because you could have had, various or you could have had them not looking like themselves, whatever. But
Right.
I do think they did a great job. I didn't really pay attention to how tall they were. I was just enjoying the interaction between them and the other characters and sitting there freaking amazed that I'm actually liking these two characters. Even doing funny stuff like riding whenever he goes in and rides the horse thing, the saddle.
Yeah, the
horse
Riker
thing.
maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny to me. I mean, and probably in the animated, I would be going like,
Yeah. How fortunate is it that these two voice actors look enough like those characters? I mean, you're right. They may have been used as reference to some degree in making the model sheets for those characters in the first place. But yeah, if Bart Simpson had gone through the portal, you would have gotten Nancy Cartwright on the other side, and we wouldn't have understood what was happening, right?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, this is always interesting. I think of some of the stuff they've done in the Clone War stuff in the Star Wars side, bringing some of those characters to live action. Katie Sackhoff playing her character off the Clone Wars animated series. And I even think they are doing the same thing with Theron. He's the same voice actor from the animated character.
How about that?
So,
Yeah.
so it's really cool that they can even attempt to do that. And the fact that it was so well done. And I want to get into some of the mannerisms. Maybe you guys can speak up on this. I just laughed so hard. And again, things that would have made me angry on lower decks, I couldn't help but to be in awe of and love it. For instance, Boimler fixing or being able to track the Orion ship. He's under the console and wires everywhere. That scene is directly out of Lower Decks. Directly.
No.
In his run. Different things about the character that they brought over. Was it anything about these characters in particular that was brought over from the animated series that really kind of jumped out at you guys? What about you, Larry?
For me, I love Tawny Newsom because I used to watch Space Command, and of course, I watched The Boys with Jack Quaid, and of course, we saw him in Hunger Games. I love the fact that Tawny and Jack's banter as Beckett and Boimler was so good. They didn't lose it at all. When they're sitting in there and she's like, "Look, man, don't ruin this for me or I will kill you." That was still the same as in the show. And there's one point where she goes, Boims. And I was like, wow, they are hitting it just like the show. And I always remember when you take a character from animated and bring them to live action, they are not going to be the same. There's a certain, as you said, you called it them a little bit more muted, but there's a certain point of realism that you have to bring to it. Same thing when you take a 3D character and make them animated like they did, we know. And, there's going to be a certain goofiness you can do with those characters that maybe you couldn't do in live action.
That's right. They don't have the same amount of stretch and squash. They can't literally move from place to place in an instant the way they do on Lower Decks. But I enjoyed the shot of Boimler running down the corridor at one point to catch up with Mariner. And I thought that was as close. That was very close to him moving at that impossible speed like he does. Yeah. I agree with Larry 100%. It's you can. That's one of the things that I think was wise about using these voice actors, even if they had not resembled the characters they play, because clearly they have chemistry that they built up over some time here. And I don't know if they get to play it that way in the studio or not. A lot of voice actors work in isolation, but But if they get to play off each other like that in a studio, they just took that in front of the camera, and it's perfect. It really felt to us like that's those characters. We know them.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
it definitely felt natural. I mean, they have mentioned that Mike McMahon allows them to do a lot of freestyling, improv in their approach to the show, and even Jonathan Frakes in the Ready Room mentioning liking that approach from their showrunner. So yeah, you can see that come through. It oozes through in their performances in this episode. Wingrace in the chat mentions Mariner hugging her legs and Boimler doing the slightly odd hand position holding was on point. Yes, yes, Jack Quaid definitely brought the oddness to the character. So, Lee, if we're going to get into the timey-wimey stuff, we're Doctor Who folks.
you have to say timey-wimey.
Yeah, it comes with its territory, right? But how do we feel about that in the episode? The whole excuse for them being 120 years in the past, and maybe even the heartfelt message that, there was a lot of those in this episode, but the message for the Orions that Boimler somehow kind of is the reason Tendi is a scientist now, because he was the one who set off the chain of events to make these Orion scientists, So it kind of blew my brain. But how did you like time travel in this episode?
It's always what happens in time travel stories, right? That there's a point at which your mind just goes, okay, I can't, I can't anymore. But you're encouraged to try, and they were warned, and they understand. They have a history of what happens when you travel through time that our cast does not. People in Strange New World don't, right? I mean, there's a part of you that wants to say, hey, why don't you just do the slingshot effect around the sun and you could.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That hasn't happened yet, has it?
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, boy.
I didn't say that to anybody.
But as Worf is my witness, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Oops.
Oops.
Yeah. I loved
boy.
all the slips like that. Yeah. But yeah, it is. It's one of the things I really admired about it is that it is a very thoughtful script in that perspective. We're having a lot of fun, but we're also treating seriously the fact that they could do real damage to the future, to their own time. And Boimler is a goofball, but he's also a good person. Yes. And he does not want to have something happen that would adversely affect the Orions because he has a personal connection to them. Yeah. And there's a whole planet down there that just lost its shipload of triticale. I love that. TOS shout out there. And that has to be undone. Moving them to another planet is not going to, keep the timeline the way it was. And he knows this is his fault. He wants to put everything back the way it was. And he knows that one of the ways he can do that is by giving people help that he has from 120 years of advantage.
Yes.
But he's also not supposed to do that. That's a great moral dilemma to place any character in. I just thought all that was very interesting and very well done, very well handled. So,
yeah, I love the bit of relatability that Lon had from her recent time travel experience. And she's trying to relate to Boimler that, you don't want to do this and do that. Remember our directives whenever time travel is in place. But Kyle, so we know why Spock is a little bit different. He's been going through things this season, of course. But, of course, Boims thought he broke Spock. Thoughts on his interaction with Spock in this episode?
Well, to paint it in a little bit of a broader picture, this goes into what we know about history and our interpretation of history. So his mental image of Spock is this idealized version of Spock. So yes, he is seeing something that's really, really not Spock, but it's just something that they don't talk about. It's not included in the complete history of Spock. You see where I'm coming from? So any of this that they're seeing, you've got this concept in your mind of who these characters are, and you're geeking out about it. Because while I was watching it, and I know that these aren't real people per se as characters, but as I was watching them fanboy both characters against all the people that they're meeting, I was saying, what if you had Kyle meet the characters of Wilf, of Donna, of Martha, of Sarah Jane. Lord, help me if I would have met Sarah Jane. But imagine, geeking out saying, ooh, you were in the library. You've been saved or something like,
Yeah.
know where I'm going with
Would
that?
you be able
So
to resist?
would I be able
Yeah.
to resist? So I could definitely understand how he thought he broke it. And I loved the fact, I actually thought it was endearing that he was so upset over the fact of I broke Spock.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, so much of the future depends on him. So yeah, he does not want to mess with that. Now, for me, this starts to get in some of the heartbreak moments of this episode. He goes up to Christine Chapel and he pretty much asked her what's going on. And we just have started to see this relationship start to flourish between these guys. And he kind of gives us her some hard news by saying that, the Spock you have with you now, this loving, caring Spock, is not how he turns out. So, in that moment, he kind of breaks our heart. So that really got to me. Larry, hot Spock.
Well, you gotta love it, Mariner.
Yes.
That was one I was gonna say. Boimler and Mariner in this episode were us. It was
Yes.
very meta,
Mhm.
and I see people all the time who talk about Spock, and they'll see a different interpretation, like Ethan Peck or Zachary Quinto, and they're like, "That's not Spock. Spock didn't do this." And I sometimes go, "What did you not watch the thing? Because you would know. You should know this stuff has already happened if you are as into the thing as you say you are." I mean, I loved when he smiled. It was like when Leonard Nimoy is hanging upside down in that tree.
Mhm.
And Kirk says, remember we talked, and Kirk says, "You didn't hear me call for you, Spock?" "Oh, yeah, I heard you, Jim. I just didn't want to cut back." And he's smiling. And it took me to that moment because as a kid, I was kind of freaked out. Whoa, Spock is, whoa, what's going on? And there were a couple times, that happened, but that was one of the biggest episodes. So I loved it. Mariner, and they were like, "Oh, hot Spock agrees with me,"
Yeah.
because the thing is, when they were us in that moment, because our heroes are never going to be like what we think. And when you meet, if we could go back in time, literally, and see people who we admire, or I've always thought about Martin Luther King. I'm sure that if I hung out with Martin Luther King every day, he's not giving a speech and stuff, and I'll be like, and he's like, "Look, man, you got a dream." He said the thing. He said the thing. He said the thing. And
Yeah, go with that.
And he'd be like, what is wrong with this guy? But I love that aspect of it. I love the fact that he was basically like, "Oh my God, I messed up Spock."
Yeah.
Because the historical representation of a person is not really that person.
Yeah.
It's just a snapshot.
Yeah. That's a great observation. It really is. Yeah. And this episode, I knew going in pretty clearly it's going to be very lighthearted. I do not expect that I'm going to shed a tear before this is over. But I got one. It got me right in the solar plexus. And it's about that Boimler's bug-eyed admiration for Spock. And I know that feeling, about other, real people, what it would be like to be ushered into their presence. And when Spock gave him the salute as he's about to go through the portal, I thought, wow. Yeah. Yeah. And Boimler doesn't know what to do. We're saying peace and long life anyway. Well, yeah. So, that got me. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course they got to do that experiment together, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Even though it kind of felt tragically, but trying to make some heronium, I think is what they were trying to make. So I thought that was pretty fun. And Boims was Boims in that moment. I want to talk a little bit about Uhura in this episode.
Mm.
So Mariner comes back and she does a bit of aggrandizing or admiration of Uhura. Of course, they're looking at these figures 120 years in their past, and they are seeing these people as legends. But I don't know. For me, it seemed like I wanted. I don't know if explanation is the word. I don't know if I've ever gotten that much. Now I know Nichelle Nichols, the actor, is fabulous. Was fabulous, but I don't know if I've ever got that much aggrandization of that character within the universe as much. Did that shock you guys a little bit? That Mariner was that amped to speak to Uhura?
Yeah, it feels
Not-
a little
not me.
retconned, but it makes sense also because she
I-
is awesome.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with Lee. I totally agree with Lee. I think that was a little bit of equal measure retcon, an equal measure of meta, and and an equal measure of storyline. Because the meta in it, I see that more so as you are playing the character who was by many facets or is not was but is a groundbreaking character in television history, and you look at it from a woman of color talking about a woman of color. That's kind of, I just saw it as a reverence thing.
I will say this. I was lucky enough to have that moment in real life, sitting beside of Nichelle Nichols and getting to meet her. She was everything you could want. And I was probably like 21 when I met her and got to do, and I can tell you, I was Mariner. I was sitting at one point, we're sitting at the table, we're doing security for her at a convention in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I was sitting there going,
Yeah.
it's Nichelle Nichols. She's right there. And I literally had this stupid grin. And my friend said, "You're in heaven right now." And I said, "Oh God, yes. Yes, I am." So I can honestly say I had that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of getting the feels, I mentioned that earlier in the episode. Lee mentioned his moment. Of course, we had the Spock moment of getting the feels. Again, I got a little bit with Uhura, with Mariner and Uhura, but one that really got me that I did not expect was, we almost see a fear, or it comes off as a fear of number one when Boims gets to the future, or gets to the past at first. And, we go through this whole awkward thing of he has a pin up in his quarters on his wall. And man, to go from the very first episode, or the first couple episodes of this season, Una almost being kicked out of Starfleet, and for her to come full circle with the To the Stars with Great Hardship being on a poster for Starfleet recruitment in the future. I said, yay for her, because she's been through it. And I wonder, we didn't see any of her in TOS, but I wonder, is there a future for this character beyond, Strange New Worlds? What do you guys think?
Well, we did see her in TOS, but
We did? Number one?
yeah.
Once.
Oh.
Well, in the cage. I mean.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, the cage.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always thought that's an interesting character. I thought so in the cage, and so I'm glad that they were, trying to build on that and go forward with it. Yeah, there's nothing she can't do. I'm sure you all got the meta joke there at the end too, that Ransom approves of the poster, and of course that's
His wife.
that's Rebecca's husband, who's.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, that's a nice little inside joke there. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course he approves of the lady on the poster. So.
I was,
It made me cringe a little bit, but yeah, the meta of it makes sense.
But still, it's kind of like.
I was gonna say, that moment reminded me, and from Star Trek to Doctor Who, it's all related. It reminded me of the episode with Van Gogh. Like, oh my God, if you could take someone into the future, and even though Una didn't get to travel to the future, she got to know what she did meant something, just as the Doctor and Amy showed Vincent that your work will live on past you.
Yeah.
And it will inspire. I cried
Yeah.
buckets of tears on that episode, by
Yeah.
the way. And
So
this
do
one,
we.
this one got me like that. In that moment, I literally felt tearing up that she can go, oh my God, something I did matters in the future and inspired people. God, that would be beautiful.
Yeah. And I love the way that Rebecca, the way she played that too, is that as the character, number one, knows that she's not supposed to know that really she needs to just distance herself emotionally from having heard that and pretend like she didn't hear it. But she did. And it is going to change her.
Yeah.
And she just, in that instant of time, she just leans into it. Okay. I'm going to become the icon of Starfleet. Okay.
Yeah, and it's so interesting now that these other characters are getting a small peek into their future because, again, my last, kind of tear shed moment or, you feel it well up a little bit is when you think about what happened to one of Lee's favorite characters of all time, Pike, in this episode. When Boimler is telling him, hey, he's telling everybody it's his birthday coming up and celebrate with him because you don't know how many more you have left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And the way they pivoted it into not how you're feeling, but how the others are feeling. That was what stood out to me.
That's right. Because he's got good reason. I mean, he said, you know what? Believe it or not, I know. And this isn't about that. And they said, still.
It's not about you.
It's not about you. Yeah. It's always the problem about funerals. It's not for the deceased. It's not. It's for everybody else.
Oh my God.
That's some great comments here in the chat. I
was just looking at one.
Yeah.
Should we pick up a few here?
Yeah, I think if
I like the one that our
Clarence
friend,
has got the power.
Go ahead, Kyle. I think you can do it as well. Put it up.
Okay. I love this one.
Of course, because they're co-signing.
Exactly. So thanks, Tasha, but I just had to show that one. That one was brilliant.
So we have one here from, let's start with Win Grace, I guess, here. I was half expecting Una to joke to be, oh my God, it's the voice of the computer, but in a body.
But you don't sound like her. It's so weird.
We have Brittany who says that they will be at GalaxyCon this year that will be at GalaxyCon this year when I meet LeVar Burton. I also met John Delancey, William Shatner, Jonathan Frakes, and Gates McFadden last year and was a bumbling fool. So, Larry, you're not the only one who shakes in the presence of greatness. And Facebook user here saying that Ad Astra Per Aspera moment in the episode was a shed a tear moment. Yeah, it was really good. Really good arc for Una. We had all these small arcs in this episode that's about these lower deckers, but that were really had a lot of advancement to these characters. And I was here for every minute of it. So the good writing goes a long way. Let's see here. Facebook user saying, I love seeing Una get the acknowledgement after almost getting drummed out of service. Yep.
Yeah. She knows that's her whole big story.
And Tasha saying she'd mop up the floor if she met LeVar Burton. And as well as Brittany. Oh, yeah. And that Facebook user is our friend Alan Seiler. So, hey, Alan.
Oh, hey, Alan.
Hey, Alan.
Cool beans. Yeah. And speaking of fanboy moments, it comes full circle. I mean, us being fanboys of Star Trek, we're watching these shows, Boims and Mariner being fanboys of that show in general, being fanboys of Trek's past. And we get here 120 years in the past. And when we go to find this Iridium, we see that almost everyone on the crew are fanboys of the NX Enterprise. So to hear my boy Travis Mayweather's name mentioned, and Oshi Sato, yeah, that was so good. So good, man. I was here for it and loving every moment of it. So, yeah, everybody has their fanboys.
That's when they said Do we sound like them? Yeah. And Spock said, yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
And it was so good because, of course, they would look at, we know by Discovery when they're on the bridge, and she said this will be the first time we've been to the Klingon planet since Archer's Enterprise. Yeah, they do look at everybody on that bridge of that ship, including, Trip and Reed and all of them. Yeah, they got schools and space stations and star systems named after them, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by the birthday though, by Pike's birthday. I was a little surprised by that one. Being a holiday. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe.
Hmm.
So, does anyone else have any other thoughts on this episode that I have failed to bring up or they'd like to mention before we start to wrap here and give ratings?
You can talk about this title sequence. You
Yes,
can talk about
yes, that's what I wanted to talk about. Go
Good,
for it.
okay, because I talked over you, but
No, I want you to talk about it. I want to hear.
I was just that first shot of the sort of the lights coming on the saucer section. I thought, wait a minute, are they? Oh, wow, this is a commitment. They're going to do the whole sequence like this. Oh,
Yes.
right, that is an investment. That's incredible. And of course, at least two of the shots of the Enterprise have the whatever that thing is that's biting the Cerritos in their opening segment.
Yeah.
is stuck on the Enterprise as it would be, I guess. Just fantastic. And I date myself here, but I was 12 years old when the animated series began. I'm like Larry. I started watching Star Trek when I was 5, just like you. But that's because that's when the series premiered, when I was 5. But I was there, man. But yeah, imagine being a 12-year-old boy and to know that Star Trek is coming back. Wow. And it's going to be on Saturday morning. Yes. And there's just so much that's so wrong about the animated series. It just doesn't work. And some of it is because it was done so very much on the cheap and so much in a hurry. But the scripts were not. And they're written by our A-level people who'd written for the original series. So that opening title sequence for this just made me think, oh, please, let's just keep the voice tracks and everything from the original series, and let's just replace all the animation, and let's just make it look like this.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh my
man,
God,
wouldn't that be something?
That was probably until the new movie, and even more this show than even J.J. Abrams' movies. The series, you are absolutely right, Lee. The animated series was the most we got about Spock's life.
That's
about
right.
his life on Vulcan, about his relationship with his parents. The episode where he went back to see his younger self.
Yesteryear.
That's why I love the one when they talked about, he's like, oh God, you didn't talk about his pet
Sailot, did you? Yeah.
You're such a fanboy.
Yeah.
I love that one because I remember that episode, like Lee watching that and being like, Spock had a pet, really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the one she said his mom said on the original show.
Mentioned in Friday in Journey to Babel. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many great things in the animated series. And what if it all looked like this opening title sequence? But I'd kind of like to know a cost factor analysis of this. Yeah. This is me being the production geek. How much did it cost to make that title sequence for this one episode? I'm all there for it, but yeah. Oh, and Windgrace here in the chat is pointing out that Uhura is in command of the Enterprise at one point in the animated series.
Yes,
thank you very much. Yeah, and yeah.
Oh wow.
So in the Lorelei signal, that's right. Yeah. I'll never forget that. And yeah. But anyway, so yeah, that opening title sequence, it was totally worth it, and the tag, of course, too, with our cast.
Yeah.
Who are also animated, apparently as a result of whatever it is they're drinking.
Right.
So,
yeah, and it was pretty cool seeing them in animation at the very end. That was awesome. Yeah. I want to point out here, this was pretty funny in the episode. When I forgot who said it, but they said, what's after the dash?
The dash.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. Like,
Boimler
hey,
can't keep his mouth shut, so he just keeps
he really
spilling
can't.
things out like that. The one that bothered me was him pointing to Ortega and saying, "You're a war hero." I think if it was me, I was thinking, "Hey, that's great." Wait a minute, why?
Yes.
Well, I thought they were talking about the Klingon War,
Yeah,
but
she said in one episode, yeah, I did that during the Klingon War. I like the
yeah,
fact in this show where they continuously touch on
yeah,
that war affected. You see that with Chapel and
mhm,
Mbanga, you see it with Ortega's, and you haven't seen, of course, number one and Pike, as they said, were away. They established that
mhm,
in Discovery
yeah,
because in case things went bad, they said we wanted our best to survive.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's pretty cool, man, that they go, okay, this was not something that just happened, we're not going to mention again. This really had lasting effects on us.
yeah. It clearly cost Mbengus something.
oh yeah, we're gonna see that. I think the next
I think,
episode.
yeah, I
Yeah,
think we gotta, yeah, we're gonna explore that. So,
see what that super soldier serum was all about. I guess.
yeah, we're crossing the streams again.
Oh, Wingrace has a great comment here, talking about how Pelly was talking about our heroes were just people trying to do their best. I almost like, is that somebody's quote that I just don't know, or was she just making it up for the show?
Hmm.
Did that relate to anything that you guys know of, or was that just for the show in the moment?
Don't know.
Don't
But it's
know.
a good observation.
Yeah.
It's really true.
But I'm curious
Yeah.
of this question real quick. Lee, what do you think of Pelia as a character? How do you like her?
I'm really intrigued. I always enjoy Carol Kane and everything that she's done for years and years and years. And I loved in the previous episode her being outraged at being called a space hippie, which is a TOS shout out, of course. And the first film that I ever saw her in, she was in fact a hippie. So that just seems like sure. Um, she's outside of the norms, and Pelia doesn't play by the rules, and she's learned over the centuries she doesn't have to.
Yeah.
And like Q, she says being immortal is, mostly boredom, and she's not having it. But you have to admire that, unlike Q, she wants to have fun without messing with other people. She's
Oh,
having fun on her own. And yeah, Galen says that's Cary Grant.
really? Now that's cool. I did not know that.
Really? Because I know the last one was, because I remember I brought that up because I looked it up because I didn't know it was Cary Grant when she said, I pretended to be the person I wanted to be
Oh,
until I became that person,
that
or
one.
that
Yes,
person became me,
that's
or we
right.
met in the middle.
Galen, you're 100% right. I now remember that is something that Cary Grant used to say. That's right. That he made up Cary Grant. Yeah. Because he was Archie Leach. And he just, yeah.
They all
I
changed their names back in the day.
Yeah. But I kept playing that guy until finally that's who I was. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I have had badges that you can touch and turn on, and Pike's right. Flipping the grid that's the best part anyway.
Oh man.
You know what I would have given for one of those communicators as a kid? Oh my God.
Yes. Oh man. Yes.
My
Yeah,
life
I got it
would've-
all now.
Oh, I had this stupid phaser. It was actually a big flashlight.
Yes.
They passed off. I said, okay, that does not look like what's on TV. I got it. It's a big flashlight, but it's made like a phaser, and I'm running around the yard with this big flashlight that's supposed to be a phaser.
No, I had this too. There were several things that were marketed as phasers before Paramount realized they could actually settle in on making real related merchandise. But that flashlight thing was the one that actually looked most like a hand phaser of any of the other things they'd marketed. But you're right, it wasn't anywhere close. It still wasn't close. But
I just love the fact that
anyway.
the two of you know what each other are talking about. That's cool.
I'm still trying to figure out who Cary Grant is.
The senior Trekkies.
You had to be there. What's those?
You had to be there.
It's like getting your Star Trek bridge set and
Yes.
open it up. My heart sank, and my grandmother, we had to go back to the department store and get me the figures because the figures didn't come in it.
Yeah.
So imagine meeting some of these people. I don't know if Lee's met any that I've met, and I had their action figure.
Yeah.
That's surreal.
Yeah. No, I the only member of the original cast that I met was Leonard Nimoy, and that was before there were any of the action figures. That's how old I am.
Oh my God. I met all of them except Leonard and DeForest. The rest of them I've met them.
D. Kelly didn't really do the circuit that much. He didn't. Yeah, you would have to have gone way out of your way to make that work. But yeah, are you on the waiting list for the Wand Company's tricorder?
I wish.
Yeah, I managed to get on that first, but they got held up during the pandemic, and they say they're getting close because, man, I want that tricorder. So
I'm gonna blow your mind before we get the ratings. I'm gonna blow your mind. I have a dear friend of mine, Scott Maynard. He is watching this, and we have been friends since 1987. We have gone to all kinds of Trek conventions. In his home, you ready to have your mind blown? He has a ton of Star Trek stuff. Some of it actually is from the sets, pieces that he got at auctions. And when you go into his Star Trek set, do you know what doors you have to open to go into his Star Trek sci-fi area?
Oh God.
The TARDIS.
Oh,
Sure.
Oh, God.
He has doors to his man cave or it's the TARDIS.
That's how you know you made it, man.
Oh my God. I said, I just want to live at your house, Scott.
and let me guess, he has R2D2 standing guard, right?
Right.
I'm sure
Across the
he's
street.
got one around somewhere. He's, as I said, he's got the phaser. He's got every sonic screwdriver in a case, all the phaser models, Battlestar Galactica we love too. So it's a whole thing.
After the snap says, "This is a hell of a tangent." Yeah, it is.
and
I also
go ahead.
Win Grace's comment. Well, I love that she says, "I wonder what mirror universe Pelly is up to." That's something to think
I
about.
wonder. I wonder. Oh, and I'll plug real quick. If you haven't seen the Star Trek toys that made us on Netflix, it mentions a lot of those cash grab toys that they had. I think the most notorious is the helmet with the lights on it. That's supposed to be something to do with Spock.
It says Spock in bold letters across the. Yeah,
We don't talk
So you'll
about
know
that,
that's him.
Clarence. It's like the Klingon forehead. We don't talk about it.
yeah, that's right. It's not something we talk about.
Well,
But that
guys-
was Leonard's way back into the series. That he was able to say, I know you own the marketing rights to the TV show, but that picture on the box, that's my face. That's me. And in the court of law, that stood up, and they had to pay him for all of that stuff. And he was the only one of the original cast who was able to make that work. And he wasn't going to do the movie or phase 2 until that was settled. So God bless him. So yeah, all those stupid toys, they ended up having a purpose. They got Leonard back into the franchise and got some jingle in his jeans too. So anyway.
Well, guys, let's go ahead and get ratings for this episode, Those Old Scientists. I will start first. I'm going to give this one a 4.9. Hell, I'm going to give it a 5. I really have no qualms with it. I loved it to pieces. I'll watch it again and again. It's one of my favorite Star Trek episodes, if I think about it in totality. So, yeah, it's 5 for me. Cal, how do you rate this one, sir?
I was going to say, as a wise man once said, like I did last night, but since we have the wise man with us, I'll let him speak for himself tonight. But that being said, I had nothing bad to say about Lower Decks for an entire episode of discussing Trek. So for that alone, 5 out of 5.
But you slipped your dig in anyway, didn't you?
No, I didn't. I didn't because I really enjoyed them. I really did.
By implication.
Yes. I really did enjoy them, hands down. I really enjoyed them.
Larry, what you think, man?
Oh, it's a 5. It's just a no-brainer 5.
Awesome. And Mr. Shackford?
If I had been calculating my vote while watching the episode and Spock wished Boimler long life and prosperity, I would have said 5 out of 5. So I'm going to say 5. 5 out of 5. This is the way.
This is the way. All right. And also, people in the chat, you can chime out and let us know what you think of the episode. We have 5 out of 5 from
Crossing
Redney.
the streams all
Would
over
not stop with a 5 as well. And also Tasha with a 5. So it looks like everybody freaking loved this episode. And again, they tricked us with dropping it on a Saturday during the Comic-Con. I mean, we're scrambling. I'm still trying to get notes for the last review we did. Like, what? Whoa. Yeah, okay. We'll get her done. All right, guys. And we're going to wrap up there. Of course, if you want to shout out to us, you can hit us up at Discussing Trek on any and all social medias, or fans or feedback at discussingtrek.com via email. I'm going to go around the horn and let the panel give any plugs or anything they want to give or talk about before we wrap this up and get out of here. And I'll start with you, Cal. Anything you want to shout out before we wrap things up?
I don't know. Maybe for anybody that's watching this, oh dear, it's Tuesday. I found my recorder.
This is Discussing Trek, Cal. Not okay. We'll let that settle.
But I will plug one thing. For anyone who is listening that is a fan of Doctor Who, check us out at discussingwho.com, where you can hear Lee, Clarence, and I just ramble anytime about everything in time and space. So there you go.
Yeah, and Cal's going to have us a review of Barbie, because I heard that Shooty Gotwood was in Barbie, so he's going to provide us a review of Barbie on the channel, right?
Highly recommended, people.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Lee. Any plugs, any shout outs, and recommendations for Barbie, maybe? Thoughts?
Yeah, I'm serious. It is what I hoped it would be. It is not a movie about Barbie. It is a satirical reflection on materialism and the roles of men and women in our society. It is a very thoughtful and extraordinarily moving movie. There's a reason why people are flocking to see it, and it's not just because they're taking their little girls to see Pink Barbie. It really is a brilliant movie.
And
adding
to the
and Shooty Gott was in it. Yeah.
And adding to what Lee just said, I saw an article today that Barbie's Monday box office was one of the biggest Monday box offices in history. So
Yeah.
I'm not at all surprised. Yeah, I think people are coming out of the theater saying, "Hey, you need to see this movie." I know what you're thinking, but yeah, you really need to go see it. So my shout out is to the blog psychologytoday.com, where you'll find a think piece about Barbie written by my brilliant wife, Dr. Karen Shackelford. So just go to Psychology Today and do the search engine and look for Barbie and see what she has to say about that. It's very, very thoughtful, of course. So I'm her biggest fan. Karen's, not Barbie's. Anyway.
Larry. Anything to shout out, sir?
I don't really, other than I can't wait to do the Doctor Who with you guys. Of course, I've been watching Who since 1980. And it's one of my favorite things of all time.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
awesome. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, guys. Well, we're going to wrap there. Thanks to each and every one of you in the chat for joining and listening. Again, if you can give us a like or subscribe, or even subscribe to the podcast feed as well, we'd really appreciate it, because we love having your ears and love getting the feedback. So keep it coming. We really appreciate y'all participating in the show. And yeah, we're going to end with that. Thanks, guys. So until next time, live long and prosper.